They laughed at her, a poor girl, standing under the hot sun, selling bread just to survive. But what they didn't know was that one day, this same girl would own the entire city. Every morning before the sun rose, Oluchi was already awake, not because she wanted to, but because she had no choice. Her small broken house stood at the edge of the village, where the wind blew dust through the cracks in the walls, and hunger was a constant visitor. Her mother had fallen sick years ago, and since then, Oluchi became everything: the provider, the fighter, the survivor. With a small basket of bread balanced carefully on her head, she walked barefoot through the streets every single day. Fresh bread, she would call out. But most days, people didn't even look at her. Some ignored her, some waved her away like she was nothing. And others, they laughed. "Look at her, the poor bread girl," a group of women mocked one afternoon. "Do you really think selling bread will change your life?" Another added, laughing loudly. Oluchi forced a smile, but inside, their words cut deep. Still, she kept walking, because stopping was not an option. One day, something happened that nearly broke her. A well-dressed man stopped her. "I'll take all your bread," he said. For a moment, her eyes lit up with hope. "All of it, sir?" she asked, her voice trembling with excitement. "Yes, but I'll pay you later." Oluchi hesitated, but she trusted him. She handed over everything and watched him walk away. That was the last time she ever saw him. That night, Oluchi returned home with empty hands and no money. Her mother looked at her weakly from the corner. "Oluchi, did you sell the bread?" she asked softly. Oluchi couldn't speak. Tears filled her eyes as she slowly shook her head. That night, they slept hungry, and for the first time in a long while, Oluchi cried herself to sleep. But that night, as she lay there, staring into the darkness, something inside her changed. Something powerful. Because Oluchi made a decision that would change her life forever. That night, as Oluchi lay awake, listening to her mother's weak breathing, she made a silent promise. She would never be cheated again, never be looked down on again, never go to bed hungry again, no matter what it takes. The next morning, Oluchi did something different. Instead of rushing out to sell, like always, she sat down and thought. For the first time, she didn't just want to survive. She wanted to win. She looked at the little bread left from the previous day, and noticed something. Whenever people finally bought her bread, they always said the same thing. "It's soft. It's fresh. It tastes better than the others." Oluchi paused. What if this small thing was actually her advantage? That day, instead of walking around shouting like before, Oluchi changed her strategy. She stood in one place, a busy corner in the market, and instead of begging people to buy, she spoke with confidence. "Try it first," she said calmly. "If you don't like it, don't pay." People stopped, not because she was loud, but because she was different. A woman stepped forward, took a bite, paused, then her eyes widened. "This is really good," she said. Others heard it. They came closer. And one by one, people started tasting. And just like that, Oluchi sold out. For the first time in a long while, she went home with money in her hands. Real money. Her mother looked at her in shock. Oluchi, so what changed? She asked. Oluchi smiled softly. I stopped begging and started believing. Days passed, then weeks, and something began to happen. People stopped calling her that poor bread girl. Now they said, go to that girl in the market, the one with the sweet bread. Her small spot became popular. Customers started coming looking for her, not the other way around. But just when things started getting better, something unexpected happened, something that would test her. Again, one afternoon, as Oluchi was selling, a group of bread sellers gathered, watching her, whispering, angry, jealous. But because the girl they once laughed at was now taking all their customers. And then one of them stepped forward with a look that said trouble. The woman stepped closer, her eyes filled with anger. You think you're special now? She snapped. The other sellers stood behind her, murmuring in agreement. You're stealing all our customers, another said. Oluchi remained calm, but her heart was beating fast. I'm not stealing anything, she replied quietly. I'm just selling my bread. The woman scoffed. Then leave this market, she said harshly, or we'll make sure you regret it. For a moment, everything went silent. The same people who once ignored Oluchi now stood watching, waiting to see what she would do. Oluchi looked around, at the customers, at the women, at her small table of bread. Then she took a deep breath. I'm not leaving, she said. Her voice was no longer soft. It was firm, confident, unshaken. The women were shocked. Oh, this was not the same girl they used to laugh at. Then don't say we didn't warn you, one of them muttered. And just like that, they walked away. But their eyes said one thing clearly. This was not over. The next day, trouble came. When Oluchi arrived at her usual spot, her table was gone, her basket missing. Everything she had set up disappeared. She froze. Her hands slowly dropped to her side. No, she whispered. A nearby trader shook her head. They came early this morning, she said quietly. They took everything. For a second, it felt like the world stopped. Everything she worked for, gone. Just like that. Tears filled her eyes. But this time, she didn't cry. Instead, something else rose inside her, stronger than pain, stronger than fear, determination. That same day, Oluchi did something bold, something nobody expected. She didn't go back to the street. She didn't beg. She didn't quit. She walked straight out of the market and headed for the biggest part of the city, a place where only serious business happened. People stared at her as she passed, confused. What is this small girl going to do there? They whispered. But Oluchi kept walking, step by step, with nothing in her hands, but a powerful decision in her heart. Because this time, she wasn't coming back as a small bread seller. She was about to do something that would change everything. Forever, Oluchi walked into the busiest part of the city, where big traders shouted over each other, where money moved fast, where only the bold survived. She had nothing left. No bread, no table, no money. But she had something stronger. A decision. As she approached a bakery shop, bigger than anything she had ever seen. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. People lined up outside. This was where the real business was happening. Oluchi stood there for a moment, then walked in. I want to work, she said. The owner looked at her from head to toe. You? he asked, unimpressed. What can you do? Oluchi didn't hesitate. I can make bread better than what you're selling. The room went silent. Some workers laughed quietly. The owner raised an eyebrow. Better than mine? He asked. Oluchi nodded. Give me one chance. For a moment, he studied her. Then he smirked. Fine, he said. One chance. They gave her ingredients. Flour, water, yeast, simple things. But what Oluchi did with them was not simple. She worked with focus, with passion, with everything she had learned through struggle. When the bread came out of the oven, the smell alone made people turn. The owner took a bite, paused, looked at her again, then took another bite. This, he said slowly, is different. That day, everything changed. Customers began asking, who made this bread? Why does it taste so good? I want more. Sales doubled, then tripled, then exploded. The same girl who once walked barefoot in the streets was now running the most popular bakery in the city. Months passed, then years. Oluchi didn't stop there. She expanded, opened more shops, hired workers, built a name, and one day she stood at the top of the tallest building in the city, looking down at everything she had built. The streets that once rejected her now carried her name, and those same people who laughed at her, tired they now stood in line just to buy her bread. Some even worked for her. One of the women who mocked her approached her one day, head bowed in shame. Please, I need a job, she said quietly. Oluchi looked at her and smiled, not with pride, but with strength. Tomorrow, she said calmly, be here early. Because Oluchi had learned something powerful. Success is not about revenge. It's about rising so high that the past can no longer touch you. She was no longer the poor bread girl. She was no longer the one they laughed at. Oluchi now owned the city, never looked down on anyone, because today's struggle might become tomorrow's empire.